we, again, at scale, we've developed this system because we're trying to be efficient about our time. And the goal is to bring someone from hired, to the point that they're exceeding. But, I'm telling you guys this as somebody who's literally hired thousands at this point. I've been doing this for almost 7 years, believe it or not. And I have gone through thousands of Filipinos. I've gone to the Philippines multiple times. I'm very acutely aware of kind of how this all should work or could work.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Earnings Per Call Show, a series dedicated to ambitious marketers looking to scale in the pay-per-call industry. We're going to help you with the ins and the outs of media buying, mindset, strategy, and resources that will put you on top of your game and generate the highest earnings per call. I'm Bill Somerville. I'm the founder of Insurance Pay-Per-Call Network, Policy Buying, and the host of the show. So let's get started. Today's guest is Glen Shelton of Lead Heroes. Glen is someone I've been happily doing business with for the past 6 years. And he's also a staple in the online marketing world. Not only does he run a phenomenal blog concerning the subject, but he also has authored a book, regularly appears on podcasts and vlogs like this one, and answers questions and gives direction to new agents in some Facebook groups. He also helps his elderly neighbor shovel their driveway and pulls cats out of trees. Wow. That's it. Okay, so I'm never letting guests ever write their own introductions ever again. That's it. You've ruined it for everyone. Welcome to the show. How the hell are you?
Bill, I'm excited to be here. I really am. The vigilante background, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to disclose my alter identity, Lead Heroes. It started as me being a local superhero. I don't think most people understand that, but I have tights, I have a cape. And then it turned into insurance marketing after the local superhero gig kind of took off. But
okay,
that's a little known fact. I don't think I've really shared that before with anybody.
I did not know that. Do you still own these tights, or at least the cape?
That maybe on the next show I'll actually wear the costume for you, Bill.
You'll be recording immediately after this. We'll push off all other guests just to do part 2, where it's nothing more than just like a full body of you and the outfit, and then it's 10 seconds, then we cut it, and that's it.
I love it.
So you'll have to save that getting into the superhero stuff for the next episode. But in this episode, I was hoping maybe we can get into a little bit of how you got into Medicare. How did that happen? I mean, most people don't, grow up and be like, you know what I really want to do? I really like to be a Medicare agent or be involved in Medicare.
Right.
How'd you pick this? What did that look like?
It's even like a step further in the opposite direction than what you were saying. Not only was Medicare not on my radar originally, but when I first got my insurance license and got into the industry, the agency, the IMO that I was doing business with or that I contracted through, they were hammering me. Anytime I said anything about Medicare, anytime I talked about a Medicare contract or Medicare leads, this upline told me over and over, there's no money in Medicare. You'd be crazy because again, this was a life insurance focused IMO, FMO. So they claimed they also did Medicare, which was part of the interest I had. Again, brand new green agent. I didn't know, I didn't know anything. But they were telling me over and over, there's no money in Medicare. Why would you waste your time selling Medicare? You're going to go sell one Medicare policy that could be the equivalent of, it'd take you 3 Medicare policies to equivalent 1 life policy. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. And unfortunately, I really took that hook, line, and sinker at the start of my career. and hindsight being 2020 now, no pun intended, for last year, but
we're gonna take some pun
now. It was really based on their override structure, right? Obviously, the upline override structure that they were operating, the life insurance premiums were really where they were making their money. And that's why they were influencing agents to stay away from Medicare. So really, it wasn't until I had left this agency or this IMO until I finally started to venture into Medicare, and absolutely regretted that I didn't get into it sooner, because I love the space. I love that it's a commodity, right? Everyone has it. It's not life insurance where you're taking money instead of trying to save people money. That's kind of the key difference, right, between final expense and Medicare. I loved that every senior has it. Some version of Medicare, every senior has it. And the renewals are fantastic. So again, as an agent or an agency owner, you can really build your wealth. Life insurance, you're on the hamster wheel every week, every month. The renewals aren't really there. Nothing even close to what I've seen in the Medicare space. So that was kind of my journey. It took me about 3 years in the insurance industry before I even started looking at Medicare seriously.
And what, what made you look? Was it just the fact that you're such a rebel and they were like, don't do the purple bus, do not look at Medicare? And you're just like, well, what's going on over here? Because honestly, that would have forced me, like, knowing how I think, I would have been like, well, this must be the good stuff over here. If you're telling me not to do this, like, I'm gonna stick my tongue on this frozen pole. We're gonna see what kind of party happens.
Well, I mean, again, I think, anyone who's crazy enough to start their own company, right, Bill? You got to have a little bit of that in you. When someone says, don't look right, look left. Well, what's over here? So it definitely led me down a rabbit hole of researching Medicare a lot more because of the answers I was getting. But what ultimately bridged me to Medicare is when I was focused on selling life insurance, I'm kind of torn. I'm equally torn between selling to the younger crowd, the crowd, say 20 to 60, pre-Medicare. And then I'm selling final expense to the seniors, 60 plus. And so when I kind of made this decision where I enjoyed selling final expense and I was really consistent with it, and that was I kind of decided I was going to leave that younger crowd alone and focus almost exclusively on the seniors. That's when I really kind of started taking Medicare even more seriously. And I'll never forget, there's so many appointments where I'm sitting down with someone and they're like, oh, you're the insurance guy? And they're just throwing their Medicare policies in front of me. And they're like, we got these like 7 years ago. What do you think? So it was just a really natural, it's a life health license, right? I mean, they're already combined. I'm already dealing with seniors. It was almost inevitable in many ways that I got to Medicare, one way or another.
So you're a Medicare agent now. You're Glenn, the Medicare agent. How was if it was, I don't know, right? So how was your strategy of consumer acquisition any different with I guess the Medicare side of it than whatever else that you were doing? And let me just ask that one question first, and then I want to ask you a bunch of other things, but I'm going to start with that. How did your consumer acquisition strategy differ from what you started doing to like moving into the Medicare side of the house?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, again, I was taught and I learned how to sell insurance through direct mail. That was really my exclusive marketing paradigm for the first 3 years of my career. And then as I'm transitioned, so the transition that kind of happened, and it wasn't smooth by any means, it was a learning experience, but I go from being at this agency to I'm an independent agent now. I go from I'm only selling life insurance to, okay, I'm selling life and health. I'm selling final expense and Medicare. I'm only using direct mail to now I have free reign because I don't have to do business the way this IMO wants me to. So now I can start experimenting with my client acquisition. I can start experimenting with marketing and see what works, what doesn't work. And so, you know, initially it was, okay, I need to find a direct mail replacement because I don't need to do business with that upline anymore because I'm no longer with them. But then I realized the cost and really honestly more than the cost is the speed. Direct mail is so damn slow. You drop mail, right? It could take anywhere 3 to 5 weeks before you're getting that mail lead back. And then one of the worst parts, right, is you get that mail lead back and you call Mrs. Jones up and she's gotten so many of these in the mail. She's also 75 years old. She doesn't even remember sending that mail back, you know? So there's a lot of issues I felt like with direct mail. There had to be a better solution, right? I really felt like there had to be a better way to market for Medicare and for filing expense.
Interesting. It took you 3 years to like really like get to that point of where you're just like, direct mail might be good, but there's a better way.
The upline was subsidizing a lot of the mail costs for me. So it was kind of a, you know, you don't know what you don't know, I guess. Right. So it took me, you know, leaving the house before I really grew up fast. But, you know, essentially once I realized, you know, my future wasn't working under this IMO, that's when I was like, okay, there's time to experiment options. I mean, and at this point I really did start experimenting with all sorts of things. You know, there was, you know, organic internet leads. I was trying to look at possibly generating paid internet leads, shared internet leads. You know, at the time, avatar telemarketing was still legal. So, you know, that was
like the James Cameron movie.
Yeah, that's right.
The blue things.
You lie down, and then you turn into a senior, and then you can walk around and market to them. No, avatar. For those of you who don't know,
for those that don't know,
avatar telemarketing is this concept where you put a soundboard in front of a foreign telemarketer, and instead of that foreign telemarketer actually talking on the phone, they're pressing buttons of an English speaker. And the idea was that it's not a robocall because there's someone facilitating that phone call. But the problem was, if you listen to it, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an avatar telemarketer and a robocall. They sound almost identical.
Until you say, "Sir, repeat the word purple to me." Yeah. They're just like, "I'm sorry, I cannot understand what you are saying." Purple. Say purple. If you say purple, I'll start reading off my Visa card number to you right now. Yeah, so that's interesting. I wonder where James Cameron got that from. Maybe it was from the Filipino soundboard crew. Who knows? You don't know. You don't know until you don't know.
That's right.
Glenn, I want you to tell me a story, right? You tell me a story. So you're trying all these leads. You're trying everything. You're trying avatar. You're trying internet leads. You're maybe still doing a little bit of direct mailers. You get all this stuff coming from. Do you remember vividly the worst lead you ever got? Just something that was so bad, where you got cussed out. They came to your house and like put a brown paper bag with something in it and sets it on fire. Like what was the worst lead that you got that just made you say to yourself, maybe even like, I can do better than this?
Questioning my sanity. Yeah, there's a few of them for sure. The one that comes to mind was actually a direct mail lead where, and again, you know, it always blew my mind because you're holding this direct mail lead, someone signed it, someone mailed it back in. And I remember calling this guy up, and it was I'm trying to remember the time. Maybe it was a little later. I'm assuming this guy was inebriated at this point. But it was just like a rampage. It was a rampage. And it was just like, F you. I'm calling my lawyer. You can't call me. You're not allowed to call me. And I just remember thinking like, okay, who mailed this back in? Because, I've got a signature here. I've got your information. How do you think I got your information to call you? It was definitely one of those leads where, after I get off the phone, I just kind of sat there almost in a bit of a stunned silence, where it's like, what is going on? Like, I'm trying to help you. I'm calling to help you. I'm trying to help you. Why are you threatening to basically kill me through the phone? I'm like, I don't know.
And this is direct mail, so these are local people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was within my region. Yeah, I mean, this is a local person, but I just remember thinking like this guy was just off his rocker, just exploded at me. And it's one of those things where like, who knows what happened to him that day, right? Maybe he was just having a really, really bad day. I don't know.
Oh my God, dude. I'm due for my next shot of espresso. It's like, I just realized it. 12:53. If you see the wife pop in through the back door with like a little, she's not going to do that. It's just a little tray, a shot of espresso.
Order up. I'd like another double, please.
Yes, please. Let me just slack the coffee shop real quick downstairs. See if they can get this order moving for me. No, it doesn't happen like that. Okay, so you're, berate, drunk, or just full blown insane. These are the types of leads that you're not just getting, but you're paying for. Of course, they're being subsidized, so that maybe that takes a little bit of the burn off. But still, like, some of Glen's money is going into this. Definitely some of your time, which is is not even arguably a lot more valuable than whatever the couple bucks were that you had paid for the lead. And this is the outcome. So at this point, you're starting to have these ideas that maybe I need to explore some of this lead generation stuff on my own accord.
Yeah, 100%. And what I really fell on was, because again, as I was going through on the life insurance side, and as I'm selling more and more, I took on an appointment setter. So I already was paying someone at some point to make calls for me. And so it kind of seemed like this logical next progression where, okay, if I'm already paying someone to make calls for me, and this was like someone part-time here in the States.
Was it your kids? You making your kids make calls for you when 2-3 years old?
Yeah. Just guilt trip people.
Yeah, you're already feeding them and housing them. It's like, you better.
My daddy can't pay the bills unless you let him in to sell you insurance.
There might have been a lot less berating and yelling and cuss words if that was the case. But so you hire somebody to call the leads or to appointment set for you. That's awesome. Tell me about that experience, man. How did that work out for you?
I went through a few different people here stateside. I was trying to pay like a fixed cost per appointment. There was highs and lows. Some great opportunities came from it. Some where I was like, what is this? Like, this wasn't even an appointment. But ultimately, like we were talking about, like, the value is really my time. And the idea was, I didn't want to spend a whole day setting appointments for myself. If I could hire someone to make phone calls for me, I'm saving time and I'm able to sell more.
Sure.
And that's ultimately what led me to, trying to hire outside of the US. And my first hire, so I have a Filipino call center now, but my first hire was not in the Philippines. My first foreign call center hire was actually in Jamaica. And I thought Jamaica was like the promised land. I really did. It's close to us as far as time zones go. Who doesn't like a Jamaican accent, right?
Can you do one for us on the show?
I don't. I think if I were
Come on, man.
if I were to do one, I think Zoom would immediately pull the recording. They'd be like, we are not allowed to process this.
I'll tell you what, at the end of this interview, if you want to give it a shot, so if it does cut off, you're safe. We'll come back to that.
Yeah,
That's perfect. That's perfectly sad. That's good.
I passed. We're still recording. Okay, good.
So you're hiring from Jamaica. I mean, I could imagine there's some issues, right? Like it's in the Caribbean. I live in Florida. I know that we have like these twisty like windstorm things that happen quite frequently to Florida, but even more frequently to the Caribbean. It's still, I mean, my wife is Puerto Rican, man. It's like whenever they're just like, there's a potential hurricane there, she starts filling up pots and pans with water, expecting for our water to shut down. I'm like, honey, we're in Florida. You've been here you've been here for 20 years. Like, you know that's not how it works. And she's like, you can never have enough water. She doesn't talk like that. She doesn't have an accent, but when I always put one on for her.
I think it adds character. I like it.
Yeah. She like stops the tubs and like fills up tub water. She's like, we can drink from here.
Yeah. I mean, I could see you like a dog just drinking out of your bathtub, you know?
Come on, with a cup. We're not animals here.
Oh, okay.
We do have a new puppy and another dog that would drink like that, but
so I wish I could say that the biggest issue was something like the weather.
It was weed.
It was not weather related at all. And a fun fact for some of you who might be watching this is Jamaica is actually really popular as a call center location. There's companies like AT&T. I don't know if they still have call centers down there, but they had a really big call center down there. So, you know, this wasn't an original idea by any means, me going to, not literally going, but, you know, looking at Jamaica to hire someone. But the first gal I hired, she had like 8 children. Which I have 3 children. I don't look down upon anybody who has children by any means. But the problem is there was no separation between her 8 children and her trying to make phone calls for me. And I'd be listening to the phone calls back and you would like hear her like shooing her kids away from her while she's on the phone. And I'm just like, listen, I'm like, you do a great job. I really appreciate it. But, you know, you can't have your kids around you while you're making phone calls. It just doesn't work.
I feel like that's reasonable.
Yeah. Yep. Which was like, that was honestly, it was one of those failure, like looking back, it's one of those failure experiences where like, I feel like I was relatively close to just throwing in the towel at that point where I was like, oh, I can't hire people remotely. It doesn't work. You know, like similar. I'm sure you've probably had a few of those yourself where you're like, this just doesn't work. Nope.
No. Yeah. It's something I think about even daily. So I get that. So Jamaica's out. Do you go back to Jamaica or you just say Jamaica's out?
Jamaica, bro. I want a beating. I'm a glutton for punishment, Bill. I'm a glutton for punishment.
So you run it again. You say, run it again. Where are you finding these people? What are you going on Craigslist or you're going, where are you acquiring these Jamaican call center reps?
So at the time, this was before Upwork. This was when it was still considered Odesk. That's where I found these original Jamaicans. And so what happened is I thought, okay, maybe Jamaica's legit, but the gal I hired wasn't legit. So then I hired a guy down there. And it was a little better experience. But again, it just still wasn't what, like there wasn't the conversion I wanted. The cost didn't make it, like it just wasn't quite there. And so that ended up being fruitless as well.
So how are you just measuring this purely from, from set appointments? Is that like the only KPI that you're running these guys off right now? It's like, I don't care how many dials, I don't care about this, I don't care about this, how much data that I send you. Like at this point, because I know that your operation is extensive right now, but I would imagine like when you first jump into it, you're like, I only care about one thing. It's set appointments or transfers or whatever the case may be.
So at this point, it was really just like leads generated per hour. Because at this point, I was really just generating leads for myself, whether it was final expense or Medicare. I was kind of doing both at this point. So it was really just, okay, how many hours did you dial? How many leads did you generate? And then, what was my success with those leads? I mean, that it was really just those three things.
Okay. That's fair KPI. So you decide that, the second appointment center that you have in Jamaica is no-go. Are we abandoning Jamaica now? Are we staying in the Caribbean? Are we going to Central America?
I'm now done.
Okay.
And I get almost in like a more desperate approach. I kind of take a shotgun approach. And I'm just like, I'm going to try hiring all over now, because like it was like there was enough success with that second Jamaican that I was like, okay, maybe this can work. I went from like wanting to throw in the towel to, okay, maybe this can work. I just need to find the right person or in the right place. So then I hired Philippines, India, Pakistan. And then I even tried hiring someone in the States again as well. So now I'm kind of testing this all over to see, what's going to end up working best.
And what were this? So this is really interesting to me, right? So you're split testing different people in different areas of the world with totally different cultures. So you're talking about, India, Pakistan, kind of similar as cultures as opposed to like India, Pakistan, the United States and the Philippines. Like, those are very far reaching. What were your findings, man? Like, can you tell us anything about the reps that you were using? I guess like start in the States and let's go west or far east.
Thank you for correcting yourself there.
Thank you.
I'll get a lot of flack even today about hiring Filipinos. Well, why don't you just hire people stateside? They can speak English better. They would generate a better lead. You're just trying to save money. So, and whenever this comes up, I tell them, I'm like, actually, I've hired people here stateside to try to do this job. And what I found is that even when I adjust the wages, right, and I'm paying essentially like an entry-level wage here in the States, these people burn out significantly faster. They're not as motivated and they're not as consistent. And so even though here in the States, yes, you have someone who is an American, who speaks English very well, who, can generate a lead and it can be a high quality lead, the overarching performance never went anywhere. And I hired at least a couple different American, if you include the ones that I hired to do appointment setting for me, there's probably half a dozen Americans that I've hired over the years.
I'll include that.
Yeah. So that was just kind of the overarching, that's how it always went. Even if it started well, it seemed to kind of die pretty quick, their performance. And I attribute that to the compensation. But again, I can't pay someone, a really great wage if their performance isn't there. And again, it kind of comes down to this cost analysis, right? So then we go east, we'll go to let's go Pakistan next. So Pakistan, Pakistan, actually, the English is pretty good. They, it's similar accent wise. I'd say it's kind of similar to India, where there's enough of a barrier there where it can be kind of tough. The problem I had with Pakistan is I've hired a couple different people in Pakistan to make phone calls. And one of the first ones, they immediately outsourced it to someone else, which just pissed me off so much. As soon as I hired this guy, he hired someone underneath him. And the guy I hired I don't think he made any phone calls.
So you got upset because you were outsourcing your calls and to somebody else, and then they outsourced their calls to somebody else.
Without my permission, I had to do some sleuthing to figure that one out. But yeah.
There's an Alanis Morissette song about that. It's like rain. Sorry. On your wedding. Yeah.
So, maybe it wasn't fair that I'm judging based on that first experience, but that was a really big, I don't know, that just made me so upset. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. And then India, you know, I've hired tons of people to work for me in India. They just seem to have an inferior accent compared to these other places. So their English is probably one of the, again, it depends on the individual. It's not really fair to generalize here and just get blanket statements. But, you know, again, my personal experience was that the accents of the individuals I was hiring in India, it just didn't compare to some of these other spots like the Philippines. The other thing that I think a lot of people miss when you're doing stuff like this is the culture. There is instead of just looking at the English or the accent gap, you also need to understand the culture gap. And the Philippines, if you go into the history of the Philippines, they actually have a British colonization that happened in like the 1700s. And so Manila, the largest city in the Philippines, has a rich history of English. And the culture isn't super far apart. Like they understand American culture. So English is part of it, but culture is another part of it. And then, you know, you have to kind of look at the wages. But ultimately what I found is the Filipino I hired, you know, she was willing to put in the time. She was converting more leads per hour than anywhere else. So Jamaica, India, Pakistan, America, the Philippines, the first gal I hired, she was converting more per hour than anybody. And the quality was there too. It wasn't just this raw number of leads that were being generated. It was quality and determination. I mean, I knew right away. I'm like, the Philippines. I'm like, it's the world's call center location. It'd be crazy to go anywhere else. You know?
Yeah, I mean, they have a reputation for it, so there had to be a reason for that. I mean, we have a phenomenal crew of, I won't even call them virtual assistants, like they're team members at Policy Buying.
Yeah.
And none of them are outbound dialing, right? We have, you know, our teammates that do everything from billing that are certified through programs like QuickBooks and Xero that they've done after they've onboarded. So again, like super duper intelligent, awesome, great to talk to, very transparent, just amazing people to work with. What I'm curious about is, I guess this comes a little bit from like my marketing mindset, is split testing, right? I'm always really interested in split testing. I split test everything, man. Like I literally, my wife makes fun of me, but I split test my espresso, right? Like I'm different beans, keep things constant, like the weight of the espresso that I'm putting in it, the temperature of the water, the length of the pull, like everything. So that I get it as consistent as humanly possible. And I can be like, I like this type of coffee. I don't like this type of coffee for espresso. I do like it for pour over or drip or whatever the case is. Do you have something like that? Do you have, I'm sure at this point, maybe not back then, but at this point, you probably have a system that you could just drop somebody into that is either going to chew them up or polish it up and spit this team member out and be like, this is a good person for an outbound dialing campaign. Do you have a system like that you would be willing to spread some light on? I mean, you don't got to go right down to your secret sauce, but just like if we have anybody on the podcast that's looking and is interested in hiring offshore, like the Glen Shelton Lead Heroes method of figuring out boom or boom.
So, and the other thing to consider too is, and you're talking about like KPIs, you're talking about split testing, it all evolves as you scale. And I was telling you, I think before we went live here on the show, you know, we had over 100 employees on payroll during AAP, this last open enrollment. So it changes as you grow, but the system that we have today, I talked about, I was using Odesk at the start. Now we have boots on the ground when it comes to actual hiring over there. So, we have locals who are essentially doing our headhunting for us, right? So that was a big leg up that I highly recommend. If you end up getting really serious about this, it's hard to kind of beat boots on the ground organic outreach. So after that, we go through an interview process. It's a 2-part interview process. Someone from my team does the interview, and then I will listen to that interview. So that way I can kind of clarify, is this person conversationally fluent enough that they can talk to a senior and they can generate this lead? So, they get found, they get interviewed, I clear the interview. Then they go into our video training. We've got about 30 hours of video training that they have to go through.
Wow.
So that's usually about like a 2 or 3 day process for them to get through that, probably at least 3 days. Maybe it's not quite 30 hours, but it usually takes them about 2 to 3 days to get through the video training. And then after that, we go into onboarding, where we have team members in place that are getting them situated on the dialer, doing role plays with the scripts that we use, making sure their internet connection is stable enough, and just kind of, ticking those final boxes that this person has the potential to do the job. And then after that, they go live, and then we really keep a sharp eye on them for the first 2 weeks specifically to see if they're going to be, like you said, a sink or swim situation. Because in the first couple weeks, usually they're either going to take off and hit that minimum expectation or hopefully exceed it, or it just didn't work and you got to get rid of them.
So, and I mean, you developed this process over years. If I got somebody that's got no experience in outsource hiring, right? Whether it's the Philippines or outside, if you had to strip it all down, right? I took away your videos, I took away everything. And I'm just like, Glenn, you don't even have a headhunter anymore. Are there things that you do right now with your screening that I don't know that are the most important things that you could do even with none of that like flashy 30 hour videos? Like, for instance, I'll give you a great example of it. Like, so for our startup, one of the biggest questions that I like to ask is, and I get all kinds of great answers for this, is give me an example of when you've done a lot with a little bit, right? Because we're a startup, right. We're not funded with VC cash yet or anything crazy like that. It's important to me to know that, somebody can take a dime or take their time and stretch it for a good amount of runway. So I don't know if there's something like that you ask them, even if it's something as silly as like, have you ever done this before?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And to really simplify this for those of you who are looking to hire in the Philippines or outsource phone calls, you can really boil it down to talking to them, making sure they're conversationally fluent, and then putting them on the phone and seeing if they can do the job. We, again, at scale, we've developed this system because we're trying to be efficient about our time. And the goal is to bring someone from hired, to the point that they're exceeding. But, I'm telling you guys this as somebody who's literally hired thousands at this point. I've been doing this for almost 7 years, believe it or not. And I have gone through thousands of Filipinos. I've gone to the Philippines multiple times. I'm very acutely aware of kind of how this all should work or could work. And there's people that I've interviewed before where they sounded amazing. They had great experience. They sounded like an American, and then they couldn't do the job. So don't get too caught up in the again, I know I went through that whole process, but if it's just for you or just for your agency, you don't need to go through all of that. You can literally just qualify them, put them on the phone, see if they can do the job. Because at the end of the day, it really comes down to that sink or swim moment. They're either going to figure it out, convert on the phone, and they're doing well, or they can't figure it out, they're not converting, and you got to get rid of them.
I feel like that's good advice. I always look for some type of secret this or that, but I think when it comes down to that, it's really just like, hey, load them up and give them data and see if it's making sense or if it's not making sense. And if it's not, then you stop, and if it is, then you continue and you can scale. When did you tell me a little bit about your transition from Glen, the Medicare agent, to Glen, the call generator, the lead guy, lead heroes, the Glen that I know, that I always will know. Yeah, man.
So the transition. So I mentioned I hired this Filipino gal that I really liked, and she was doing great for me. She was generating plenty of leads. I was converting those leads as an agent. And what happened was I wanted to control her full time, but I didn't need 40 hours of work for her. I only needed 15 to 20 hours to satiate my needs at the time. And so the thought I had is, okay, if I can pay her full time, I take those 20 to 25 hours of lead generation that she's going to do for me. I'm going to then sell those hours or sell those leads that she generates to another agent or agency. And now I'm zeroing out my marketing cost, and I get to control her schedule. And it was really that little pivot that turned into, oh, okay, turns out a lot of people need help with this. All of a sudden I'm at 10 callers, and I don't even have time to sell insurance anymore because I have, essentially this full-time thing that came out overnight almost. I'd say within about 2 months of this pivot, I go from like 1 caller to 10, and now I'm spending, full time with my team. And that's why I said, insurance isn't going anywhere. I could start selling insurance at any point. I was kind of like, let's see where this goes. I built a website, kind of
a phenomenal website, by the way.
I appreciate it. It wasn't when it was first built. There's been a lot of time and money put into it now, but when it was first built, it was like a landing page. But
do your overseas guys handle web dev and like Vici setup and stuff like that, or is it just strictly dialers?
So I've slowly over the years, I've internalized a lot of these outsourced. So like the Vici stuff, that was something that I internalized. So we have like a platform now. The web dev, again, same thing. We kind of took that in, internalized. So, I kind of, the more, I guess, again, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, being a control freak, you want to try to control as much as possible while it still makes financial sense. But I do feel that, control, like the Vici, being able to control the dialing platform, being able to control my web presence, that was definitely a big help for sure.
Sure. And you have an awesome web presence, man. It's just like, I have had several of our team members go out and research and just learn about the Medicare product, and you've taught them to a degree. Of course, like they're running into, when they're doing search, stuff from big partners like eHealth, United, like direct carriers that are putting intel out there for the actual consumer market to educate themselves, and also capture them as a lead as well. But they came across Lead Hero blog. They've come across it on several occasions and are just like, look at this. This is number one. They like it because they like the color scheme, right? They said it just pops better than anything else that they've seen. It's a fun website. And they said the best thing that they liked about it was that it was explained in layman's terms. And Yeah, it's one of the things that we have constantly strived to do at Policy Bind is make the insurance shopping process easier for everyone everywhere. And the best way to make the insurance shopping process easier, correct me if I'm wrong, is through education, because people are confused about it, especially Medicare. You got A, B, D, F, G, you got all these different parts of it, and it can get confusing, and I know that through my own experience, with helping my mother and family members, turn 65, born in 55, 53, that area, and just being like, what the hell is going on with Medicare? I think I get more questions about Medicare than I do about any other insurance product.
So I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the best producers I've ever met, that I've ever done business with, were teachers. I know several producers who used to teach full-time, who now sell insurance full-time, and they are incredible at what they do. And it's exactly because what you just said. I think there's so much convolution on all sides of it, right? You have the carrier putting out their information. You have insurance producers putting out their information. You have, the media putting out their information. And so there's just like this convoluted pool. So, I appreciate what you said about the website. We put so much time and money and energy into trying to be a resource for agents. I want, why am I here? Why am I talking to you, Bill? Well, because there's not enough information about how to do these things. There's not enough training information. There's not enough information about marketing. You go on our website, you don't have to buy anything, and we will essentially teach you how to prospect without ever paying us. We genuinely want to help agents be more successful. The failure rate for insurance agents is insane. It's 90%, maybe even higher, year over year turnover. So if I can help keep even one more agent in the industry, I would say that's a huge win.
I would agree, because that one agent can help untold numbers of consumers. And at the end of the day, especially where we find ourselves today in a national health crisis, not even national, worldwide health crisis, but we're talking about US Medicare right now. So we'll say national, that affects people over the age of 55 and other people with pre-existing medical conditions. And those people usually happen to be people who are older. Right. So it's I don't think it's ever been a more popular time for Medicare. I don't ever think it's been a time where if you are involved in Medicare or you're a Medicare agent, that you could seriously provide a ton of value and really help people and look and make some money as well.
Yeah.
And there's, if you're providing value, the universe says that you should get equal or more value back in exchange for that. And man, you are like the value king. I'm seeing over your shoulder that you got a book up there. And what is that? What is that book, Glenn? Where is that? The Helping Friendly book? What book is that?
So this is how to qualify, present. I usually have a copy at my desk. I don't right now. But it's how to qualify, present, and sell final expense and Medicare supplements to seniors. So when Lead Heroes was kind of in its infancy, and I'm getting continuously peppered with questions from agents, what do I say? How do I say it? I'm trying to do appointment setting. I'm trying to sell over the phone. Scripting is such a big part, and not that there's one magic script, there's not, but a lot of times you just need kind of a jump off point. So we did a survey on probably more than 100 different life and health senior insurance agents. And we just took the best responses, like the top 30%, and we included it into the book. I included my own kind of scripting and feedback. And it turned in what was supposed to really just be like a 20-page, like helpful starter. It ended up turning into like a 300-page sales guide, which you guys can find on Amazon. You can either search my name, Glen Shelton, or you can search by, the title of the book, How to Present and Qualify, How to Qualify, Present, and Sell Final Expense and Medicare Supplements to Seniors. I believe it's only $19.97 right now.
I love it. And that just, that feeds into everything, right? So you have this blog that's educating, agents and consumers on Medicare and what it can do and what it can't. Your Lead Heroes has a phenomenal, and every person that I talk to says that it's phenomenal program where you're leveraging your trained agents over in the Philippines to generate live transfers, and also appointment setting as well is becoming extremely popular, right? People don't want to talk right now. They don't want to be transferred right now, but they will set an appointment. What else is Lead Heroes doing? I mean, we usually focus, because it's earnings per call, on the pay per call model, but please, I mean, while we're on it, I know that, variety is the spice of life. What else are you guys doing over there?
Yeah. So on the marketing side, it is all call center based. So we'll do just like a lead generation phone call where we're qualifying, we're telling them someone's going to contact them. And then that can get batched out at the end of the night. We can batch it in real time, like an internet lead. We can do appointment setting. There was kind of this thesis that was untested until COVID, which I find really interesting, is telesales appointment setting. It seemed like before COVID, people really didn't want to do this or try this, but in this kind of current COVID, post-COVID era, it's really been proven on our end, at least, where you can set appointments for telesales and people will show up to them. So you can have a telesales appointment, which we had a lot of success with during open enrollment. So, live transfers. And then we also have an option where you can hire just an hourly caller. I went through earlier, talked about all these different things that we do. If you want to experiment, if you want to customize, if you have something that you want to try out, we can do that. And you pay just a flat hourly rate, and it includes everything. It includes the data,
telecom management, like everything,
all of it. There's no
nice.
There's no startup fees. There's no hidden gotchas. There's no long-term contracts. You pay a flat hourly rate. It includes everything.
There's a hidden gotcha. Glen's gotcha. Don't worry about it.
Gotcha.
That is so we usually do like a little segment in the beginning, and that's gonna be it, where I'm gonna be like, there is one. Glen's got you. It's just gonna be you, like, and just like pop, 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 like that wink kind of like twitch thing that you just had going right there. I don't know if it was a wink or a twitch. It went over really well. Awesome. So you got a bunch of different things running. The warm transfer pay per call aspect of it. I've had some experience in it, not nearly as much as you, but with the company that I was working with prior to starting up Dawn Patrol Digital and then Policy Bind, we had a massive call center operation, all stateside. But I know from that experience, what's key to a call center, almost like key to a human body, is blood, right? You have to have blood coming through, hitting all your organs, pumping properly, is data, right? You have to have data. You have to have data for the call center to dial. Let's talk about that. And then I know that you got to run. I'm gonna cut you loose. What kind of data is working for this? I mean, like, is it co-reg data of somebody that thinks they're winning a toaster oven and you're calling them because they're opting in for this, that, or the other? Is it, homeowner information? Is it like some type of public information? Like, what kind of data works the best for Medicare transfers? What are you seeing agents work the best? And you don't need to shout out a company if you don't want to, but just like, hey, what works the best is opt-ins on a Medicare site,
Sure.
Whatever. What works the best?
And we talked a little bit about split testing earlier. And this is something we have exhaustively split tested. And the tough part with data is, even if you find a good source, that source can go sour on you too. We've had a lot of those where it's like, we're getting this data, it's converting fantastically. The price is right where we want it. And then after a few months, it's just not what it used to be. So, the kind of the long and the short of it is, at the start of Lead Heroes, it was almost exclusively just consumer data that we were using, that we're running through our system, that we're scrubbing for TCPA compliance. Now we've kind of evolved more where it's more of an aggregation effort, where I don't really trust any of this. It's again, kind of a control thing. I don't necessarily trust one data source. So we will essentially aggregate from many different data sources. And, some of it is opt-in that's 1 to 90 days old. Some of it is most likely co-reg data, right? Stuff that other people are using. And then we will still use some of the raw consumer data that we scrub as well. So it's just one of the, you can't get enough people to call. You'll never get enough people to make phone calls too. So how do you maximize that? The interesting part is you can have 3 or 4 data sources from one area, like one state, and you might think, oh, there's a ton of overlap, but a lot of times there's not. A lot of times the person who opts in online, maybe they're not even in the raw consumer data, and then the person, et cetera. So we essentially have this process where we'll pull all the data in, we'll aggregate it, we'll filter out duplicates, and then we're uploading it into our dialer for our caller to rip through. And that's really what's kept us alive this long, I think. I think a lot of people who've only done one data source, whether it's this or that, it seems like they, that well usually dries up at some point. So you've got to stay on the hunt,
So diversification is going to be key when it comes to data streams. Is there any type of data that you just stay away from? Just be like, hey, like we've tried this. We went out on a limb and we tried this data that was whatever, public or private or otherwise, or aged to a certain degree, and it was just the biggest flop ever. So save your time and money and don't look at this data for Medicare. Like maybe it's like we bought a bunch of aged auto insurance data, and then there just so happened to be opt-in for Medicare on that path as well, right. And we tried it, and then boom, it didn't work.
So and again, we've tried so many different data sources over the years, but the ones that have burned us the most are the ones that typically charge us the most. So whenever I've got someone telling me, oh, this is it, this is the best Medicare data you're ever going to find, it's 40 cents a record, but you're going to convert so well. The numbers almost never back out when you're paying a lot for the data. Obviously everyone's situation is different. If you're an insurance agent and you're calling the data directly, maybe paying something like 40 cents, 50 cents a record, maybe that you can make those numbers back out. But again, from my operational point of view, if I'm paying 50 cents for a record, and if the conversion isn't just insane, the cost goes up dramatically. So
sure.
I think really it's all about kind of finding that sweet spot. The problem I have with the data space is there's so many of these data brokers now that you don't know if you're talking to someone who actually is close to the source, or if they're daisy chaining, a resell on you that's 10 or 12 people long. So some things I would say. So if I'm experimenting with a new data source, ask the provider for a free test. Obviously that's like step one. Say, hey, I have a call center. I want to run a sample. Meticulously track how that sample worked for you. Have your baseline data that you can compare to. So again, split testing. Okay, this is what we normally get. This is the data that I just got the sample for free. And I usually try to not spend a dime of my own money unless this new data set can beat my baseline or at least match it. So
you have a certain number of leads you run through, 500, 1,000, 2,000.
I use 10,000 records is like my minimum. If I don't feel like, and even that is kind of small. If you're trying to get a really accurate test, I think you may want to even run more than that. But that's kind of my bare minimum, is like, I've got to at least run through 10,000 records, and I'll usually call those 10,000 records at least twice.
Okay. That was going to be another question that I was going to ask you. So, for a good data set, like, how are you, is there like a kind way to rev the dialer, right? Like, hey, we hit data 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, but over the course of 30 days, before it's no bueno anymore.
So, we will typically go through at most 3 times. So we'll call through the data at most 3 times. That 4th time is usually fruitless. So it's kind of, usually the first pull is the best. The second pull can a lot of times kind of equal the first pull. You're just not catching everybody in the first run through. And then the 3rd time, it's usually dropping off quite a bit. And so by that 4th call through, there's usually nothing there. That's kind of been our experience. So I'm calling through the data, minimum of 2, most of the time 3 times. And then when you're playing with like your actual dialer settings, it's tough, because if you're making too many calls at once, you're missing people. But if you don't call enough people at once, you're wasting time with your employee that's sitting here on the phone that's trying to talk to people for you. So a lot of times we'll have to kind of adjust that based on the campaign. If it's a campaign where, for example, sometimes we'll have agents or agencies that give us data. They say, hey, here's our book of business. We're trying to set appointments. In a situation like that, we're really slowing the dialer down, and we're kind of crawling through it because it's such valuable data. We don't want to miss anybody. Versus sometimes if we have an internal campaign, we're not getting a good response, we're cranking that dialer up. We're getting through as many people as we possibly can to find folks that we can talk to.
Yeah. Wow. Man, I could talk to you for a long time, but I think that this is a good spot to stop for our second part, which you will be in tights for. So we don't want to steal all that fun away from that meeting, because I'm really excited for that. If people want to get a hold of you, besides going onto your website, is there a best method, or is there an intermediary or someone that they can reach out to get more information on Lead Heroes, or to contact you about your Medicare options?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, if you're trying to reach me directly, Glen@leadheroes.com, GLEN @leadheroes.com. That's one of the best ways to get a hold of me, is to just shoot me an email direct. Outside of that, if you go to leadheroes.com, on the contact us page, you can actually schedule an appointment and we can hop on a phone call. But yeah, other than that,
any groups I know that, so operating groups or anything that any agents or anybody in the lead business would benefit from getting involved in?
Absolutely. So I almost forgot. Thank you for setting me up. Our Facebook group, How to Market and Sell Insurance to Seniors. We have over 2,000 agents in there. We give away free leads, free hours with our call center, usually on a weekly basis. So if you are looking for more information, you're looking to network with agents, you want to chat with me, that's another great way to do it. Just search for How to Market and Sell Insurance to Seniors in Facebook, and that group should pop right up.
Beautiful. And one last thing, for anyone that's looking for their first hire overseas in the Philippines, do you recommend any particular groups or services like Fiverr or anything like that, just for somebody to get their feet wet, maybe try to avoid the Jamaican experience as much as humanly possible?
So I'll give you 3 options if you're brand new to this and you're trying to hire someone. So onlinejobs.ph, they specialize in hiring Filipinos. It's a job ad board similar to Craigslist. Craigslist would be another option. Craigslist is an international brand. You can hire people all over using Craigslist. And then what used to be Odesk is now Upwork. And so that's a third option that you can explore is Upwork.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Glen Shelton, lead heroes, my man over in Oregon. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate you greatly. I appreciate everything that you do for the Medicare industry as a whole. I think that you're a super humble dude that works his ass off and just puts a lot out there and doesn't expect a lot in return. And that's why I've always kept you close, and I will always keep you close. And I'm stoked to see all your growth, man. And I can't wait until our second taping.
I'm excited. I'm excited to continue this conversation. But again, I really appreciate your time, Bill, and having me on the Earnings Per Call show. You have some really great episodes out already. So I'm excited to be in the catalog. And I have a feeling that this is just going to keep growing for you. Excited to see where policy buying is going to go. I think you're crushing it already. And excited to make it out to Florida so you can teach me how to surf and teach me your ways.
It's happening.